The frozen wilderness of the Arctic stretched endlessly in every direction, an unforgiving land of biting winds and thick snowdrifts. The sky was a pale shade of gray, the sun barely peeking through the dense clouds. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, making every breath feel sharp and heavy. In the middle of this icy expanse, a small group of rescuers trudged through the knee-deep snow, their breaths coming out in visible puffs of air. Their faces were covered with thick scarves, their heavy coats lined with fur to shield them from the merciless chill. Every step was a battle against the elements, but they pushed forward with unwavering determination. They weren't out here for adventure or thrill-seeking. They were on a mission. The distress call had come 2 days ago from a remote outpost. A lone horse had been spotted wandering through the tundra, moving sluggishly, its once strong frame now weakened. How a horse had ended up so far north was a mystery, but the more alarming news was that the animal was in distress, badly infested with beetles that had burrowed into its thick winter coat. If help didn't arrive soon, the cold and the infestation would claim its life. Leading the team was Mark Jensen, a seasoned rescuer who had spent years saving animals in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. He had seen a lot. Starving, dogs, trapped wolves, injured polar bears. But this was different. A horse? Out here? It wasn't just unusual. It was nearly impossible. Horses weren't built for Arctic survival. Someone had either abandoned it or lost it, and now it was suffering because of human recklessness. That thought alone fueled Mark's determination to find the animal and get it to safety. Beside him was Elena Carter, an expert in animal rehabilitation. She had treated everything from injured eagles to frostbitten huskies, but a horse in the Arctic? That was a challenge even she hadn't faced before. She tightened the straps of her backpack, which held essential medical supplies, and glanced over at Mark. "Do you think it's still alive?" she asked, her voice muffled by her scarf. Mark didn't answer right away. He wanted to believe they weren't too late. The thought of that poor creature, suffering alone in the freezing wilderness, was unbearable. Finally, he said, "We have to hope so." Behind them, 2 other team members followed closely. Jared, their logistics expert, and Mia, an Arctic survival specialist who had lived among the icy landscapes for years. Together, they formed a team that had tackled countless rescue missions, but this one carried a weight none of them had felt before. They had spent hours tracking the reported location of the horse, relying on satellite images and footprints in the snow. The problem was snowstorms had swept through the area, covering any visible trails. They were moving on instinct now, hoping they hadn't gone too far off course. Then, just as doubt started creeping in, Mia suddenly stopped and raised a hand. "Wait," she said, her sharp eyes scanning the distance. The others froze, barely breathing. Mark followed Mia's gaze and saw it, a dark figure in the snow, standing still, barely distinguishable against the white landscape. At first he thought it was just another snow-covered boulder, but then movement, a slight shift, the faintest flicker of life. "It's the horse," Elena whispered, her heart racing. Without wasting another second, they picked up their pace, half running, half stumbling through the snow. As they got closer, the full extent of the situation became painfully clear. The horse was in terrible condition. Its once glossy black coat was matted and dull, covered in patches of ice. Its legs trembled with exhaustion, its head hung low. But the worst part was the infestation. Beetles clung to the horse's fur, burrowing deep into the thick winter coat, forming clusters that looked like moving shadows. The poor creature had been trying to rub them off against the icy ground, but to no avail. The cold had slowed its movements, and the infestation had drained its strength. Mark's stomach tightened at the sight. The horse wasn't just suffering, it was barely holding on. Elena didn't waste any time. She dropped to her knees beside the animal, carefully placing a gloved hand on its neck. Its skin twitched under her touch, but it was too weak to resist. "We need to work fast," she said, already reaching into her bag. "If we don't get these beetles off soon, it won't survive the night." Jared and Mia began setting up the emergency shelter they had brought along. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, they couldn't just transport the horse right away. It needed warmth, food, and immediate medical attention before they could even think about moving it.